Yes, can go to screen share. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my asynchronous learning on grief. How do you help a friend in grief? Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Hubbard. I am a life and grief coach who teaches and coaches people who struggle from major loss rediscover joy and purpose in their life again. Thank you for attending my asynchronous collaboration on grief. When my husband died, afterwards, well-meaning people would say all kinds of things to me, but most weren't that helpful. So I would like to educate people on the effects of grief, how to help a friend in grief, what not to say, and best things to say to someone who's grieving. This way you'll learn how to best support a friend or a loved one when they're grieving, and you will develop an understanding as to why I'm passionate about the topic of grief and teaching others. Grief is a label assigned to all the conflicting emotions associated with dealing with any kind of loss, such as physical, like things and abilities and freedoms, self-concepts like roles, values, labels, social, loss of relationship through divorce, death, loss of a spouse, child, parent, grandparent, anyone, loss of health, and much more. Now let's understand what is happening in your friend's brain during grief. This video on how grief affects the brain, I felt was very fitting so that you can understand what is happening internally for your friend.
When we're grieving a profound loss, we often say we're heartbroken, but it might be more accurate to call it brain broken, given the role the brain plays in grief. As your brain adjusts to the loss of someone you love, you might feel numb, depressed, or foggy. But moving through the stages of grief is natural and healthy. It helps you process your loss and begin to move forward over time. This is Your Brain On, where we explore how the world affects our brains and ourselves. The experience of grief is twofold: the immediate acute pain of the loss, and the months afterward as you mourn. The loss of someone meaningful functions as a stressor, triggering the pituitary gland at the base of the brain to produce adrenocorticotropin, or ACTH. ACTH sends a signal to the adrenal gland to release cortisone, a stress hormone. Unlike, say, a temporary threat, grief is an intense, persistent stressor, so your body remains flooded with cortisone. That can cause your immune system to falter, making you feel run down. This is likely why some bereaved spouses fall ill soon after their partner dies. Even if the death of your loved one was expected, the actual event can still feel like a shock to the system. In the short term, a traumatized brain is bottom-heavy, meaning primitive areas, including the fear center, are overactive, adding to feelings of stress and despair. Meanwhile, higher cortical areas of the brain are underactive, like the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps regulate emotion. You may find it difficult to let go of minor annoyances or experience symptoms like increased heart rate for several minutes after you're startled. However, over time, the initial shock of the loss typically gives way to a deep sadness or depression as you continue to mourn. Depression can cause widespread changes across several parts of the brain, including the amygdala, which regulates sleep behavior and mood, and the hippocampus, which processes memory and regulates stress hormones. These changes disrupt core functions of our bodies and minds. As you grieve, you may find yourself sleeping too little or too much, forgetting things, or trapped in a brain fog. These feelings are difficult, but the acute pain doesn't last forever. Eventually, the sadness begins to lift at least a little bit, and then you may move on to feelings of anger or guilt before slowly moving toward acceptance of the loss. Experts agree that bereaved follow their own individual timelines, but in general, this three-stage process usually takes about a year. There are steps you can take to feel better as you go through the grieving process. Talk therapy can be a major help. This might be group bereavement meetings or cognitive behavioral therapy, which can redirect negative thoughts. Aerobic exercise can improve mood, memory, and thought processing. Talking with friends about the person you lost can be a great comfort too. Studies show long-term grief actually activates neurons in the reward centers of the brain. And recalling the time spent with those who have died reminds us that the memories still live on.
So as you just learned, a person's brain in grief initially has problems regulating emotions within the first year of loss. And that is regulating the emotions in the prefrontal cortex of our brain. That's where we make the best decisions, the most healthiest decisions, and where we can regulate our emotions. But as I showed in the video, the bottom part of the brain is what's triggered, and we don't often regulate our emotions very well from that place because we really can't. And so it was just to give you an idea of what might be happening for your friends. So if they seem like they're so full of emotions and they're not regulating well, you will now have an understanding as to why. And so grief, as we were earlier discovering and discussing, covers a multitude of losses. And I threw some down here just to give you guys an idea: death, divorce, job loss, pet loss, loss of home, loss of business, loss of career, miscarriage, loss of health, loss of a dream, secondary losses from the initial loss, especially if you lost a spouse or a child. There's usually so many other losses that follow that, and the list goes on. So I just wanted to give you what I meant and what generally constitutes loss from this list. This is, and then we enter into, as you can see, when we're covering a multitude of loss, I know that most obvious think of death and divorce, but is what constitutes loss, but there's so much more that I didn't mention for the sake of time. But what I found interesting, moving from that list onto things to say and not say, and best things to say to someone in grieving. And this is pretty significant because we struggle to have the capacity to be with somebody in their present emotions. And when they are feeling mad, humiliated, insecure, bitter, distant, frustrated, or even aggressive, etc., just to give some examples, we feel that we have to move them to a happy place because we're uncomfortable with their current emotions. A lot of people don't seem to realize this. They're always wanting to move that person to a happy place. They don't want to really be moved to a happy place, however, because they're processing all these emotions and these emotions that they're going through at the time. But we're doing it not to help them, but we're doing it because we are uncomfortable with the emotions that we're seeing in them. We don't like to see them suffer. We don't like to see them upset. We don't like to see them being so bitter. We don't like to see them being so frustrated. So we feel like it's our job to move them to a happy place, and that doesn't actually do them any justice or service. So let's move into the things of what not to say. So disclaimer, I don't usually put this much text on a slide, but I did it to prove a point. In this case, when we feel uncomfortable with other people's emotions, we say things we ought not to, which does not help your friend who's grieving. This list is long for a reason to prove to you what does not help a friend or a person who's grieving. Time will heal all wounds. You just need to find a new normal, whatever that is. And time doesn't heal all wounds. It's what you do with the time that heals the wounds. It is just a cat, a fish, or a dog. What's that person, that cat, fish, or dog? It could have been like a family member. I have friends who have a couple of dogs and they call them their fur babies because they weren't able to have children. So they have dogs instead. So minimizing that for somebody doesn't help them at all. And then we have the outlaced statements. I think these are pretty significant. The outlaced statements minimize people's pain and does not offer comfort. And trust me, there are many outlaced statements that people will say to a grieving person, all of which make the grieving person or friend angry because they don't feel heard, loved, or accepted unless they are happy. So this is why the list is so long, so that hopefully when helping a friend or a grieving person, you will not say these things. So as we go on with the at least statements here, you could, at least you still have your mom, your children, your health. Yes, I do, but I still don't have a husband. At least she or he went quickly. Well, we don't really know that. At least you can remarry. Or another one I got told is, well, at least you're still young enough to remarry. There was so many at least statements. I think those are the ones that I found the most upsetting, that I would never want to repeat to anyone else. Then the list continues. There is reason for everything. It doesn't really help the person I guess it was just his or her time. It's time to get over it. God needed another angel. God has a plan. It was God's timing. When are you going to get back to normal? How about never? Because what's normal? Once your spouse is gone, or your child is gone, or your parent is gone, whoever the significant other is in your life, once they've removed, they're not coming back. So everything changes. So I don't know what's normal no more. So that's probably not helpful. Life for God will not give you more than you can handle. Well, right now it feels like it's more than I can handle. I'm like redlining here. And the list goes on, all of which are not helpful. So this segues into best things to say to someone grieving. Any of these statements are awesome. In the aftermath of someone's death, people struggle to say the right words, so they'll avoid it or they'll avoid you. Yes, both. They'll either avoid saying anything, pretending like nothing ever happened to you when they talk to you or run into you, or they will avoid you altogether. And I experienced both. So no words will really comfort a grieving person. The best thing you can do is say, I am so sorry for your loss. This takes the pressure off of yourself to say the perfect thing. You have no idea how sending a text saying I'm thinking of you today, or how much that could mean to the grieving person or friend. If there is someone that you want to support in grief, get in the game. You've got this. I know you can do this. Any of these statements are awesome. This shows that you recognize that what we're going through is full of injustice, it's unfair, and cannot be fixed. These are great for shorter interactions with someone. I can tell you, after the death of my husband, one of the best texts that I received from a friend was, I am actually going to read this text to you. I can't imagine what you're going through right now. I want to give you words of hope, but I'm speechless. I do not know what to say. This wasn't supposed to have happened. We love you and your family, and I just wanted to reach out to you today. That was like the best text I think I ever received out of many messages, or at least it was the one that stood out the most in my mind. He knew that there wasn't anything he could do to make me feel better, and the whole thing was just heartbreak. It was a touching message, and it showed me he gets it. It was perfect. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He wasn't offering me any platitudes. His message was just comforting, and this is what a grieving friend would need. So it brings me to the next point. When people would say, I remember when your husband ... fill in the blank, and they go to share a story. I'm going to say, please share the story about the deceased person using their name. And I highlighted that on the slide for a reason, because people will tend to say, when the person has lost a child or a parent or a spouse, they'll say, oh, I remember when, and your husband or your child or your grandparent or your parent, but they won't say their name for some reason. And that reason is because they don't want to mention the deceased person's name for the fear that they are going to remind us of that loss. News flash for everyone, we never forget it, it's always with us. Plus, we want to remember our significant other, our spouse, or our child, whomever it is that we've lost. We're not going to be reminded, or in my situation, I'm not going to be reminded of my husband's death. Trust me, how could I forget? So bring up his name or share a memory, as grieving people actually love that. After Ken passed away, many people came up to me and told me things that I never knew prior, and it was absolutely amazing. So please don't be afraid to say, I remember when, and share a story, as it means so much to those who grieve. And for Pete's sake, say their name. Everybody loves to hear their name because they're already concerned that people will forget about their loved one that's passed away. And the next point I bring up is, I'm bringing you dinner on Thursday night. Yes, I know this sounds weirdly specific, but it's specific for a reason. We don't know what to ask for help with. Well-meaning people, and I had several of them, say, let me know if you need anything. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't even think to eat or make food. It didn't come to mind. We're too deep in grief to think of practical things, which were pretty much non-existent. being specific as possible would be so helpful because we don't know what we want or need. When a friend loses a child or a spouse or significant other, they lose the ability to focus on practical things that need to get done, like eating, believe it or not. If you could think of practical things to help your friend, like bring meals over, mow their lawn, take out their trash, offer to drive their kids to school if they have any, offer to walk their dog if they have a dog, is hugely helpful way to support your friend in grief, and be prepared to do it for a season of time or pull other people into helping out as well, where you guys can jointly split time of supporting them and helping do things because they're not at this time capable. Next one I'm going to say is acknowledge the special days, birthdays, Christmases, anniversary of the death, or the wedding anniversary. It's nice to send a message saying, I'm thinking of you today, I care, and want to encourage you on this special day. This really encourages the grieving person and shows that you support them. Now, this video I thought was applicable to how to help a friend in grief. I hope this helps you to understand a little bit further.
So what do we do about all the pain we see in the world? All the pain we feel in our own lives? And why does it seem like our best efforts to help somebody feel better always backfire? I've been studying intense grief and loss, baby death, violent crimes, accidents, suicides, and natural disasters. And I've learned something really interesting. Cheering people up, telling them to be strong and persevere, helping them move on, it doesn't actually work. It's kind of a puzzle. It seems counterintuitive, but the way to help someone feel better is to let them be in pain. This is true for those giant losses and the ordinary everyday ones. Educator Parker Palmer writes, "The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed exactly as it is." He's talking about acknowledgement here. Acknowledgement is this really amazing multi-tool. It makes things better even when they can't be made right. For example, somebody's struggling. Their baby died, or there's been a bad accident, or their mom got sick, and they're just sad. It's way more helpful to join them in their pain than it is to cheer them up. But here's what we tend to do instead. You have 2 other children, you need to find joy in them. Or, you know what you need? You just need to go out dancing and shake it off. Or, I felt really sad once. Did you try acupuncture? We're not really sure what to do with someone's pain, so we do what we've been taught. We look on the bright side. We try to make people feel better. We give them advice. It's not like this is nefarious. I mean, we try to cheer people up because we think that's our job. We're not supposed to let people stay sad. The problem is, you can't heal somebody's pain by trying to take it away from them. Now, acknowledgement does something different. When a giant hole opens up in someone's life, it's actually much more supportive to acknowledge that hole and let pain exist. It's actually a radical act to let things hurt. It goes against what we've been taught. In order to really support you, I have to acknowledge that things really are as bad as they feel to you. If I try to cheer you up, you end up defending yourself and your feelings. If I give you advice, you feel misunderstood instead of supported. And I don't get what I want either because I wanted you to feel better. It's pretty rare that you could actually talk somebody out of their pain. Rarely does the admonishment to look on the bright side actually heal things for someone. It just makes them stop telling you about their pain. It's so tempting to try to make things better. When somebody shares something painful, it's much more helpful to say, "I'm sorry that's happening. Do you want to tell me about it?" To be able to say, "This hurts," without being talked out of it, that's what helps. Being heard helps. It seems too simple to be of use, but acknowledgement can be the best medicine we have. It makes things better, even when they can't be made right.
So I hope this helped you to understand the need to acknowledge your friend's grief and just sit with them in it and not try to change them, not try to offer platitudes, not try to do anything outside of just be with them to support them. So in summary, it's important to understand grief, the many losses that cause grief, how grief affects the brain, because then you can understand what's emotionally going on for your friend so that you can best help them, and how to help a friend and offer support by just sitting with them, just being with them. I hope that you've learned some new tools to take forward to support your friend in grief or a family member. So if anybody has any feedback or feed forward, if so, please comment in the forum below. I would greatly appreciate it. I want to say thank you for attending my asynchronous collaboration on grief so that this way you too can help your friend in grief when that time comes. These are my references, my Creative Commons license, and I'm going to say thanks so much for watching and attending, and please comment below. Stop sharing and stop recording.